Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Honestly, Let's Talk. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, and each Thursday I look to bring you a variety of conversations with some of my favorite people. When I was thinking about what episode I wanted to do this week, I thought, I love hosting this podcast and video series. I love listening to podcasts. Why don't I do an episode with some of my favorite podcasters? And so I've brought together 5 of them today. And so I will let each of them kind of introduce themselves, tell you where they are, and the name of their podcast. Barbara, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you, Todd. And you were on my show. It's called the Rethinking Learning Podcast. And I've changed it a little. It's now a little bit more about defining your why. And I'm in California, by the way, in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I added one thing. I'm starting to do reflections on top of it. And my last one was Josh Stamper.
That's right. He's on today. Now, Barbara, you've done like 1,000 episodes of that, haven't you? I feel like
no.
many episodes.
Well, there's 108. You were one of my first, right around in the beginning.
That. Wow.
Yeah, and Josh is 108. But I have 10. But I have 10, and Rochelle's been on my show, and I'm now doing what I said reflections is because I wanted to go deeper around some topics. And so it's not really about the person as much as really going deep. And so some people I've even had on my show are starting to come back doing those. Awesome. So,
well, next up, we also have got Kendrick here. Kendrick, welcome.
Hey, I am grateful to be here. Thank you, man. I am in Houston, Texas, KTTV, and I do 2 podcasts. The Daily K podcast, where I highlight educators, entrepreneurs, and also just a lot of things that go on in the city of Houston. Shout out to Barbara doing those episodes. So I am up to 85 this week I'll be dropping. And so it just keeps growing. It turned into a radio show of like 900,000 people. So it just grows. And I also do the Underground Kings podcast. And so that is about bringing the business side of music or entertainment or artists or whatever you're doing underground. Let's talk about the business so that we can help new and upcoming artists or poets or whatever to learn more. So that's what I do here in Houston. Oh, and I'm an elementary principal.
Oh.
So balancing is an act you are learning very well right now.
Hey, fun times, man.
Awesome. Well, Brittany, thank you for being here. Tell everybody who you are.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I am from northern New Jersey, so I'm like 45 minutes outside of New York City. And I am the host of the Teacher Leader podcast. And I love to talk to classroom teachers about finding ways towards leadership that isn't necessarily becoming principal or an admin or leaving the classroom, and kind of like pumping them up to take on new and exciting roles.
I love that so much. And, and that's what I love about yours is that I don't really hear about many like that because I love the perspective that you take in bringing that. So thank you for being here. And then we've got my buddy Josh on. Josh, thanks for joining.
Oh, it's such an honor to be with all these amazing podcasters and with you, Todd. My name is Joshua Stamper. I'm assistant principal in the North Texas area. And my podcast is Aspire, the Leadership Development Podcast. And I think I'm dropping 125 this week. So I've been doing this for 2.5 years, and it's been such an amazing journey. I've got to speak with such fantastic educators, from teachers in the classroom to superintendents, consultants. I mean, the whole, similar to what Brittany was saying, trying to find people that want to aspire to be more than what they are today. And so that has been my focus and my goal every single episode.
And it's also led to you writing a book as well.
Yes.
Under the same title, right?
Yeah, Aspire to Lead, and hoping to finish writing that at the end of this year with EduMatch. So I'm super excited about that. I'm also a part of the Teach Better team, and we have started a podcast network, which Brittany is on, and we've now are up to 12 podcasts on that network. So I'm super excited to be a part of that project.
That's awesome. Thanks for being here. And last but definitely not least is Rochelle. Rochelle, thank you for being here.
Yeah, well, thank you for the invitation. I was very excited to be asked to join with everybody here. So I am Sheldon Poth. I am a Spanish and STEAM teacher from Pittsburgh, and I've been teaching for a really long time, but love learning, love going to school. I'm also an attorney and an author, so I keep pretty busy. My podcast, I'm involved with two. So I have my own, which is Thrive in EDU. And there's a lot tied into that, to the word Thrive in EDU. But I always joke about my podcast because I say it's just me kind of having conversations with myself. And I do invite people to come on and chat with me, but I've only ever had comments. Nobody has ever said they would come on and talk with me. So I don't know how to take that personally, or if it's just entertaining in itself. But I've been really consistent with it. I started last September. It was always something that I thought about doing. And then every week, it's just, if I've been to a conference, if I've read something, if I've been in a conversation, if I tried something in my classroom and it failed miserably, or it went really well, or anywhere in between, I just talk about it. What I notice is it started to be a really good way for me to really think and reflect about what I'm doing. And just to keep up with something. And it's almost like self-care for me too, at this point, to just talk. But so that's mine. And then I just started a couple of months ago co-hosting a monthly podcast with Dan Kreiness. We do the Devil's Advocate. And so each month we tackle a trending topic in education and have a conversation. So it's nice to actually be on a podcast where I'm talking to somebody and we're asking each other questions. So great to be here with all of you tonight.
I love it. Well, we're going to jump right in with some of our questions tonight. And so the first question I have for you guys is, a lot of people may listen to podcasts and they may think, I might want to start one, but they don't even know where to begin. And so my first question is, when did you decide, like, hey, I might want to do a podcast? Because not only do you have to decide it, but then you've also got to be brave enough to put it out there. So Brittany, where did things start with you?
During COVID. So I know I was home and I was listening to a lot of podcasts. Like I would go for a walk because what else was there to do? And I would be I have a 1-year-old, so I was pushing the stroller and I was listening to podcasts and I was just like thinking to myself, I could do this. I could totally do this. And I did some research and I started talking to other people who had podcasts, and I decided that it was something that I've always kind of like thought about doing, like how to put my voice out there. So I thought about starting a blog, but that never really came to fruition. So this was just like the right time, like all the pieces aligned. I had the time. I mean, we were all home, and it was just something that kind of happened. And I've just been like, go, go, go since it started.
Did you ever have any of those nervous fears? Like, what if nobody listens to this? What if I don't know what I'm going to say? Like, did that ever hit you at all? Or were you just like, you know what? I'm just going to put it out there.
I still feel that way now. Definitely. And then what I did was I like put a date on my calendar that I was going to launch it before I knew anything about podcasting. And I like put it out into the universe. I told everyone that I knew, friends and family. I posted it all over social media. My podcast is going to launch, August. And I did it, like I had no choice at that point.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I will tell you, after I've done this now for a few years, and Josh can tell you because I'm talking to him all the time about this, I always think like, is anybody even going to listen? Like, but now it's to the point where I'm just like, I just do this for me. Like, I just do this so I can hang out with people like you all and then learn from y'all. And I'm like, if anybody listens, great. This is just the time for me to hang out with other people. And so, but Barbara, what about you? When did you decide that you wanted to start a podcast?
2017. I was kind of floundering, not sure what I wanted to do. And I had been talking to a lot of people at some conferences, and they were sitting me down, telling me their stories. And I went, this story is pretty cool. And so I was talking to my son is a vocal coach, and he helps me with some things. And I said, I just got this story. And he says, do it, Mom. Do it. And he says, I'll help you. You got to fix that voice, And so, so when I started, he was my first podcast just to see how it would sound. And we were laughing so hard that I said, this is really fun. I'm going to put it up there. I didn't know at that time he taught theater and music and didn't know he was a beekeeper on the side. And and then, he's starting to tell me about the bees and the honey, and I'm going, oh my gosh, you never know where these stories are going to go. And so that's what kind of pushed me to do more. And so I've now have it since I've done yours, Todd. My son introduces me now, and it's
Aw.
fun. It's really fun because he's, like I said, he's a in theater, and there is no theater right now, so it's
Yeah.
kind of fun to have. But what I found is everyone I talked to had a story. They had something that challenged them, something they struggled with that made them even stronger.
Yeah.
I mean, I just remember Rochelle's. She was in a hotel room, and we kept getting what happened? When someone kept kind of coming in the room or something.
Yeah, the housekeeping one, they kept knocking on the door, and then it was a snowstorm, so like they were trying to plow out in the parking lot. So I kept going like, wait.
It was good though, because what's cool is my son edits it, and then I have another editor now, and so we play with that, and we put music in it, and we move things around, and I really love it. It's like I wanted to be they said you're going to be Terry Gross, Mom, on NPR.
I love it.
I'm not, but I just love it. And now I just really can't wait to do one. It's really fun.
That's great. Well, Rochelle, you kind of gave us a little bit about your podcast, but when did you decide that, you know what, I'm going to record these thoughts that I have. I'm going to record this experience because, I think of it like the way Brittany was sharing of, a lot of us think about blogging first. Like that's our first entry. Like, you know what, I'll start blogging some of my experiences. But I love the idea of what you said about, I just wanted to start recording what I was going through, because for me, it's like I can communicate often so much better and quicker by saying it than by having to type it all down, because then I want to go and edit it constantly. So where did that idea come from you?
Well, it's funny because when you first asked that question a couple minutes ago, I was thinking that I thought I knew the answer to it. And then it occurred to me that I didn't, because what I thought was the reason why I started it actually wasn't. And years ago, like Brittany was talking about blogging, I thought I wanted to blog, and I didn't actually know what a blog was. I'm like, I'm just going to blog, but I didn't know what I would write about. And so I just started to write about things that I was doing in my classroom. And then I was getting the feedback from people that said, when I was looking for an idea about this and I came across your blog, and I didn't know if anybody would read it. I didn't know where to put the blog or anything. So of course, Learning as I Go is the name of my blog. But for the podcast, I had been using Synth to do just like short speaking assessments with my students. And then I was at a conference about, I don't know, probably 2 years ago. And I don't know what made me think about this, but I thought about all of the session descriptions and everything. And my friends were doing presentations. And so I just sat down. It was actually at TCEA last year. And I sat down and I started to record just using Synth, these little blurbs about, hey, coming up, blah, 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 is this session. Check out Jamie Donnelly on augmented virtual reality. And I was tweeting them. And so I kind of was like, I really like how this works. It's short, it's sweet. There's no editing. And I kept doing that. And then I was at school one day in September, and I was thinking about having my students in my STEAM class do some podcasts. And I thought, well, I guess I should try this out. And I recorded an episode, and that was it. But I used Synth at the time, and then I ended up downloading it. And now I use Anchor. But there's no special music. There's no editing. There's none of that. It's just I sit, I talk. If there's background noise that pops in, that's how it is. But I don't know. It's it's fun to do. It's good for me. Like I said, I do get, I look at just like how many episodes I've done. You were all talking about it. I think mine are probably like 80 or something. But people, I get feedback from it and said, hey, I listened to your one on self-care or something. And I just always laugh because, again, it's me just talking about myself. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to talk about in the next episode. We'll see. So thanks for listening, But,
I love that.
But you have to start somewhere.
I love, too, that you said you don't really edit, because I always admire people like Barbara who go in there, edit and make it all fancy and beautiful. And I'm like, I record and then upload, because then I'm on to like 15,000 other things. And so I'm like, I always hear other people's and I'm like, oh, their sounds so professional and nice. And people probably listen to mine and go, man, he just had that conversation and threw it up there. But that's the way I wrote mine. So Josh, what about you? Where did yours get started?
Well, you have a lot to do with it, my man. So at the time, I was just finishing a program for aspiring leaders, and the district took that program away, and I was kind of losing my purpose. Like I had this project that I was in love with, and it no longer was there, and so I wanted to find a way to like help aspiring leaders, but I didn't know what to do. And I actually visited you, Todd, at your campus, and I don't know if you remember this. I walked in your office, and you were in the middle of a Kids Deserve It podcast. And I sat down and I just watched you work your magic. And I was like, man, what in the world is he doing? And podcast for me at the time, I mean, you can see I love sports. It was all sports podcasts. And I didn't really look at the educational space in the podcasting world. And, you really turned me on to not only Kids Deserve It podcast, but a bunch of other educational podcasts. And after sitting there and asking you a million questions, and you answered every one of them graciously about the process, I was like, man, I think I might be able to do that. And it took me about 5 months to get the courage to actually put together something as far as a title and kind of get my vision of what I wanted to do with the podcast and do some research. I had no idea what to do, but leaned on people like yourself, Jeff Veal, some other amazing educators to kind of put together an idea of what the process was, and then also my vision for where to go with that. So yeah, that's definitely where it came from.
I love it. Well, Kendrick, you've got your show, but like you mentioned in the intro, you also have got a radio show, which I think is so cool that you get to be on the radio too. Because, one of my like dreams in high school was I always thought I was going to be a radio DJ. And I was like, I'm totally going to do this. And then I realized that's really not, I'm not probably very good at that. I just like picking songs and introducing them to people. But you're now on the radio, and you've got also your podcast. So where did all that begin?
Man, honestly, it all came from a tragedy, really. Like I lost my best friend and my brother to suicide within like 2 weeks of each other. And so with my brother, we were doing a lot, working on social media and building the platform. And with my friend, we were working on training. So going around and doing training for early childhood educators. So I was like, okay, both of them were gone. This happened in May. I spent June grieving. July 1st is my birthday. July 1st was the first episode because I wanted to do something that would commemorate both of them. So I started out with quotes on social media every day to just build up, but also as an intervention. Hopefully someone would see one of these quotes and talk to someone and not commit suicide or something. So that became my mission. The other way was getting information out to the public, right? So how do I do that? By talking to educators or entrepreneurs or people who can give that information. And so my first one was me and my friend on his porch with the microphone in between us. And now a year later, we got 5,000 subscribers, and it's rolling, man. I can say it's rolling, but that was really the start. I really wanted to just kind of commemorate people, and also I think it helped me, kind of get that last section of that grieve out.
I remember us chatting briefly about this before, and it's always one thing I really resonated with your podcast is because I think sometimes when things start from a very personal place, they take on a whole nother realm of importance in your life. And it's kind of like my Tell Your Story podcast that I do in conjunction with this one. Is that one started the same thing with me about just dealing with loss and me realizing, like Barbara said earlier, that everybody's got something to say. Everybody has importance and value that they bring. It's just so many people feel like that their story isn't that big of a deal, or what am I going to talk about? And I'm like, oh my gosh, do you get out of bed in the morning and go do stuff? Like, then you have stuff to talk about, because you may not realize the great things you're doing, because to us it seems normal. But for others, it really is a fantastic thing. So I appreciate you sharing that, Kendrick, and getting to let us kind of hear that side as well, because I know that makes it really personal. How did that lead to the radio?
Man, well, I was so consistent, and the content, I really focused on the content and the clips. And so the radio station kind of reached out to me and said, would you like to bring your podcast to our station? And so it's really just a replay of, of course you want it, but it's really just a replay of the podcast. So I have segments like Money Matters, or Quote of the Day, or I got people that come in from the community. And so we talk about like hidden restaurants that people don't know a lot about in the city, just a lot of things to just, inform.
Yeah.
Still have my interviews with people to bring a lot of knowledge, but play a lot of good music in between.
I love it. Well, all of us doing our podcast, we not only get to share pieces of our own journey along the way, but we get to interview a lot of people and get to hear stories and share perspectives. And so what I'd love to know from each of you, and I know this is like picking your favorite child. Like, I'm not telling you that by asking me to tell me about one right now, you're telling me the other one sucked. So if anybody listening today is like, well, why didn't they bring up my episode? Just know I'm just randomly asking, like, what is there a certain guest that comes to your mind that you're like, I really enjoyed this episode, or I really enjoyed talking about this topic? Like, what is something that an episode that really resonates with you? Josh, I'll start with you.
Rick Warmelli, I think, was my favorite episode, just because his book, Fair is Not Always Equal, was such an impactful thing in my life as far as a young educator. He talks about standards-based grading and how the system of grading is just really meant and slanted toward failure, and not everything is equal for every single child. And I remember going through that book study and really challenging not only my own views, but challenging the staff. And we had a lot of really intense conversations about that topic. And for anyone in the classroom, grading is a very hot topic. So having him on and just the intelligence that he put forward in that episode, I felt like I was growing minute by minute. And it was kind of a starstruck moment for myself also, because it was someone I was watching on YouTube, and I was just trying to get as many, reading his blogs, trying to get as much information from him. And then to actually sit across in a Zoom call with him was really impactful for me as a podcaster.
I love that. When I think about different guests that I've had on mine, there's some that I was like totally geeking out about. Like when I got to have the Green Power Ranger, Jason David Frank, on my podcast, I still today cannot believe that my childhood hero came and spoke to me. But when I think about
still can't do that.
Because in that one, like, that's so out of body experience. Like, I'm thinking about yours, Josh. I'm thinking, I don't even remember what I said. Like, I had to go back and listen to the episode afterwards, which I hate doing because I hate hearing myself talk. But I was like, what did I even say to him? Like, I was probably just like fanboying the whole time. But Barbara, what about you? When you think about all the episodes you've done, which one really resonates with you?
Well, there's so many. But I interviewed Liv. The Liv Bits is her name. She's 12 years old, and she reached out. She did a direct message to me on Twitter, and then asked me if she could be on my show. I go, really? Really? You want her to be on my show? I had just seen her on the Ellen Show. So she's like 12 years old. And so I said, oh, I'd love it. She goes, well, you probably should talk to my mama. Found out she hadn't even told her mom yet that she had asked me. So I had both of them on, and she was in one room in her bedroom and her mom was in another. And they were, we were having the best conversation. And her mom goes, you did what? Like that. So, I miss talking to kids. And that to me just was one of those where she just made me giggle the whole time. And so I remember that a lot.
I love it. Kendrick, what about you?
Man, that's a hard one, man. I'm with Barbara, man. So many. But I would say here in Sugar Land, I had a chance to talk to a guy who became like really cool. Brian Middleton, and so he's the first African American district attorney in Sugar Land, and so to be able to have someone that I could reach out to talk to my boys club at school, or to come and speak to my students, and that really was something monumental. We talking 2020, and he's the first, and so to have that and to be able to reach out, but the knowledge that we talked about and the school to prison pipeline and what he can truly do about it in his position was really, really impactful, just to be able to get that out to the community.
That is powerful. I love that. Rochelle, when you look back, I know, a lot of your episodes are you talking, but I know you also now have another podcast that you're doing too. So, if you can't think of a guest that you've had on, is there somebody that you're really looking forward to? Either one of those, or even if you share with us a topic that you really loved talking about on your own.
Well, yeah, it's I do like talking about the self-care because I'm giving advice and I'm not that great at some of those. But I've been a guest on a lot of podcasts, and I'm always honored when I'm asked to be a guest on it. And I was trying to think, okay, how could I answer this question in a different way? And I will say that Dr. Will has a podcast, and I've been on his a couple of times. And Vicki Davis, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be on, and I was on probably, I think, episode maybe 108, and then I was just on it again, and it's somewhere up in the 600 or 700s. It was like a couple weeks ago. But a funny story, I'll just tell you really quickly. Caitlin Tucker, I was on Caitlin's, and we were talking about the balance, ironically, and just, how hard it is in education, just in life in general, for us to find balance. But I told her, I admitted, and it was kind of funny. I said, blended learning and station rotation. Like, I really thought I knew what I was doing. I didn't. I read your book and I had it totally all wrong, like moment of truth. But it's always interesting to see how all the different podcasters set it up. Like, some of them just use Zencaster, and so you don't see each other. And then I always felt awkward having the conversation where it's like, that you're not going to actually see it because you're going to strip the audio, but to actually feel like you're talking to somebody. So I don't know. But as far as guests, there's a lot of people. Now, my Facebook Live, we have a weekly, 2 times a week show. So we have guests on. So that could kind of be like my podcast. But we had Dave Schmittou on, I think, Halloween, and he was dressed up as an I Don't Care bear. And Melody had a unicorn head on, and so I had to put a cowboy hat on. And then we had Matt Miller on, so Matt was fun. And Desiree Alexander was another one. I mean, I'm always looking forward to it. And actually, tomorrow we're having Weston and Molly should be on. So we'll be talking about teaching Keating. And then on Monday, Dave Burgess. So awesome. I'm excited about those. So those will be my podcasts for right now, where I'm talking to somebody else.
Well, it's so funny you made a comment there. Some podcasters record with video like we're doing now, and some record where it's just a website that you're talking back and forth like you're on the phone. And I know for me, it's like hearing now, I'm looking at y'all, I'm moving with my hands. But when I am on a podcast where it's just like on a link or something, I have to close my eyes and really focus, because I'm like, okay, they can't see me, I can't see them. But if I'm not, I'm looking around and everything because I don't have anything to look at. So I have to really work to focus on those. But Brittany, when you think about your guests, who's one that really resonated with you?
Yeah, so the one that really comes to mind is when I had Dr. Angela Draper on. She is the virtual principal, and it was the first time that I reached out to someone and asked them to come on to my podcast. So I was so excited and nervous, and she actually said yes. And we ended up collaborating. So I was also a guest on her podcast, and we got to hang out and talk and realized we had so much in common. And one of the reasons why it was also so memorable was because she's a principal, right? So I'm telling my audience that, you don't have to be a principal, but here I am talking to a principal. And it was really great because we had this great conversation about well, how do you talk to your principal as a teacher about wanting more opportunities? How do you approach the conversation? And I really don't have that experience to share, but she did. And I just found it to be such a valuable conversation. And I also really love talking to her because she kind of gave me a little bit of a confidence boost. I got my doctorate in the spring during COVID, and I haven't felt very comfortable using the doctor title yet. And she was like, no, you have to use it. You worked way too hard to not use it. And I was like, but just doesn't feel right.
You better use that. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, you should.
Come on, Doc.
I'm surprised you didn't put it in your name on the bottom of your little thing. I would have been throwing it in there. Yeah, I'm a doctor.
Hi, doctor.
I'm telling you.
Hello. I know. Well, that's why it was really like great for me to talk to her, because now I'm like, okay, I put it in my email signature.
There we
I'm like,
go.
I'm taking
I
baby
love
steps.
Well, as we wrap this conversation up today, I mean, I guess what I'd love to end on is just, people listening today may think, hey, I may want to do a podcast. So I'd love for you to share a piece of advice or something you've learned along the way or something they can look out for. What would you want to leave people with today? Kendrick, we'll start with you.
even when you get 0 likes, keep posting. That's all I got to say.
I love that. I love that. Barbara?
Start with something you're passionate about. It makes it a lot easier if it's something that you're really excited to learn more about.
Yeah.
Find someone like that.
Brittany?
I would say, if you think you want to do it, like make a commitment and like tell someone, like say it out loud. Because I think once you say it out loud, you're more likely to really like take a step towards it.
Perfect. Rochelle?
Just start, even if you're thinking about it, and don't feel like you actually have to have a guest on right away, or that it has to be perfect too, because I think that's what scares people sometimes. So it's just the idea is just sharing your voice, your story, and just starting somewhere.
I love that. Josh?
Oh, there's so many things.
Yeah.
Well, one, like, it's not expensive. Like, it doesn't have to be expensive for one. Like, if you're fearful of that, there's a lot of free resources out there. Like Brittany said, you need to lean on some folks, like people that can do it. Educators are amazing. Anytime you ask them any type of, questions or hints or anything like that, so many people have reached out and given their time and helped me. If it's the website or, how to post, or, Todd, I've spent hours with you. So there's people there that can help you. And then, like people were saying too, like it needs to be about your passion and not about being famous or getting likes or, getting people to repost it. Like that's not what it's about. It's about service and it's about helping other people. And when you have that as your focus and as your goal, then all those other things will fall in line.
I think exactly what y'all said. When you talk about things that you are passionate about and that you love, it comes through in your voice and people want to listen. They want to come back for more. And then you enjoy doing it. And so it doesn't feel like as much work when you enjoy being a part of it. Well, you 5, like I said at the top of this episode, are podcasters that I love listening to. So I would encourage everybody to go check out these 5 fantastic podcasts, add them to your list, listen to the episodes, go back. There's hundreds between these 5 that you can listen to. So go and enjoy some learning and conversation. Thank you, 5, for being a guest with me tonight. Thank you, everybody, for listening or watching another episode of Honestly Let's Talk. Remember, you can join episodes live every Thursday at 8 p.m. Central, or the recordings are up on all podcast stations.